What's up, Mecha fans, and welcome back to the channel. So, last week, Code Geass, Rozé the Recapture, the new series within the franchise, came to its conclusion with its 12th and final episode. I've seen the entire series, so today we're going to talk about it in its entirety. Before we dive into that though, I want to hear from you guys, so head on down to the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on Rozé the Recapture if you've seen it, and while you're there, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of Mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. So when this series began, I did do a spoiler review of the first two episodes. If you guys want to hear my full in-depth spoiler-filled thoughts on those two episodes in particular, then you can go check that out. I'll probably link it at the end of this video. It's got a great premiere and it follows it up with a fantastic second episode as well. Each one has a cliffhanger that just gets you fully invested and makes you want to watch that next episode. The first episode, of course, big reveal, Rozé is actually Sakuya Sumeragi, has the use of Geass, and then the reveal at the end of the second episode was maybe one of my favourite reveals in the series period, where you find out that Ash was supposedly the person that killed Sakuya's father, Jugo. She essentially used Geass on him to use him as like a slave, if you will, and it was a wild and crazy twist that I personally didn't see coming, and it's safe to say that those episodes set the bar for how interesting and exciting this series could be. I mentioned Rozé / Sakuya and Ash there, and I want to talk more about those two characters, because they're ultimately the core of the story, and they are by far the best part in terms of characters. Not only do they have compelling character arcs on their own, Ash in particular is by far my favourite character in the series, and has such a tragedy behind him, especially when you look at, I think it's episode 7, maybe episode 8, where you get his full backstory, and that episode is probably my favourite of the entire series. Rozé / Sakuya as well, she has a fantastic character arc, especially when you get to the end of the series, the ultimate decision that she makes. I thought it was a great ending for her character. I don't know whether anyone else agrees. She obviously doesn't come close to Lelouch, but let's face it, what anime protagonist does come close to Lelouch, especially the ending for that character arc? But I think Sakuya is like a solid new protagonist to add to the Code Geass franchise, where she can stand enough on her own, but there are many ways in which she evokes the feeling of Lelouch, especially with some of the more morally questionable decisions that she makes. Not only do these two characters have their own great stories going on, but they also have a fantastic dynamic that really gets developed over the course of the series. The dynamic between Rozé and Ash is vastly different to the one between Sakuya and Ash, so then you get kind of two totally different dynamics between two characters as opposed to just one dynamic between two characters, so it kind of keeps things fresh, keeps things alive. But then as you unravel the ties that bind them, the emotional connection that these two characters have, and ultimately how their bond continues to grow because of that, it is one of the best parts of the series. It's one of the most emotionally engaging parts, and it definitely, I don't want to say brings a tear to your eye necessarily, but it does kind of bring that feeling out of you. It does keep you invested. It's the emotional beating heart of the story, and I think it's damn effective. This next point should go without saying, but the animation is absolutely fantastic in this series. This is probably the best 2D animation we've had in Code Geass, but it's also the best 3D CGI animation we've also had. Nightmare frames look fantastic in action. It takes like kind of the dynamic action that Akito the Exile did, but it's just better because obviously this is coming out like a decade after Akito the Exiled. So naturally, over time, you've just continued to make changes, make improvements within animation and within, you know, like all the practices of that. So when you come to this series, the CGI looks vastly better. It looks incredible. It's some of the best 3D mecha animation we've probably had on screen. One thing I was a little worried about with this series was how it was going to use legacy characters and, you know, maybe bringing them in just to kind of sell things a little bit and rely too much on them. But thankfully, now I've finished the series, I don't think it ever really does that. Now, when you get to kind of the last few episodes, the big final battle, you get a lot of characters popping up and cameos. Like, for example, the whole crew from Akito the Exiled appear in a couple of scenes. You've got characters from Oz the Reflection showing up. You've got characters from the original series. When it comes to kind of implementing characters in a significant way, it makes sense for them to be there. For example, Nina shows up quite early on. I think she was probably the best returning character because the role that she had, it made sense for her to be there for story reasons, but also they gave her a little bit of character development. She added value to the story, but it also added value to the character as well and how she's grown since Lelouch the Rebellion. And then when you bring in characters like Cornelia and Gino, it makes sense for them to be in it because the Black Knights are getting involved to some degree because naturally they would. There's big war stuff kind of happening. They're going to have some involvement in the story. So bringing in characters like those that are pretty high up within the rankings, it makes sense for them to be there. And thankfully, those characters never took away from the spotlight of the two leads. They take away from the spotlight maybe with some of the other supporting characters in the series, but the actual two leads is 100% focused on them. They get the spotlight, and they are my favourite part of the series, even with some returning characters. As you've probably been able to tell from the thumbnail, this series for me was a little bit of a mixed bag. I've talked about all the things that I really enjoyed, and this doesn't discredit any of that stuff. There's a lot of great stuff within Rozé the Recapture, as there was in Akito the Exiled. And I don't think that Rozé the Recapture quite has the writing problems of Akito the Exiled, but it also does have its own flaws. The biggest disappointment for me is how mediocre and underdeveloped the supporting cast feel. The 7 shining stars of this series, which that is the actual name of the group, they are literally just the Black Knights. Every character within the 7 shining stars you can relate back to a character in the Black Knights from the original series, and they just feel incredibly unoriginal, but they don't get the development that some of those characters get. And part of the problem with that is that this is only a 12-episode series, and it's almost trying to do the expansive, big, larger-than-life scale story with a lot of characters in there, with a large supporting cast that Lelouch the Rebellion did. The difference is this has like a quarter of the number of episodes, so you simply cannot give the time to be able to flesh things out in the way that Lelouch the Rebellion was able to. So as you do get closer and closer to the final act, things just start to feel more and more rushed, to the point that when you get to the finale, it is rushed. The epilogue of the series is maybe 2-3 minutes. It's a pretty short epilogue that ultimately feels very rushed in the context of what the series was trying to do, what the story was trying to tell. And also the episodes can be pretty hit or miss. There's some absolute banger episodes in here. Episode 1, episode 2, I think it was episode 7 where we got Ash's backstory. Those are the 3 easily standout episodes of the series. But you also have episodes like, I think episode 5 for example. There's a lot of really good episodes in here, but then there's a lot of ones that are just mediocre or just very forgettable. I don't think there's anything that's truly a low. You don't have the highest of highs and then the lowest of lows. You have some of the highest of highs, but then you also have just a lot that's very much in the middle, which is kind of disappointing because, you've got really high, really great moments that showcase what the series is able to be, what the series is able to do, the story that it's able to tell, the emotions it's able to evoke, but then you've got just throwaway episodes that leave no impact on you whatsoever. So overall, whilst there is a lot that I really do like and some stuff that I absolutely love about Rozé the Recapture, it is still a flawed series. It was never going to reach the heights of Lelouch the Rebellion, but that is a way too high expectation to set. Even removing that though, there's things that the series does good and there's things that it doesn't do so well either. Undeniably, it is well animated. It's got really strong lead characters, but a very underwhelming supporting cast. It's got high highs of episodes, but then some that just sit in the middle and are very forgettable. So for all the extremely high strong points that it has some low to mediocre points as well. With that said though, I do think that the good outweighs the bad, and I definitely think that it is worth a watch, especially if you're a fan of this franchise. I think it's kind of a no-brainer, and you've probably already watched it. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give Code Geass Rozé of the Recapture a B. Before I get out of here though, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. If you are a fan of Rozé the Recapture, then do stay tuned because I will have a character tier list and a nightmare frame tier list as well. I'm probably going to rank the episodes of this series and we'll maybe have some other videos to come in the future as well. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.